Hello, and welcome to another video of IGCSE Economics. In this chapter, we're going to be talking about price determination. And I just want to begin by saying that in the previous two videos, we've talked about demand and supply. And what you realized is that consumers want a lower price so that they can buy more, and suppliers want a higher price so that they can supply more. So these are two opposing forces. On the one hand, consumers want a low price and suppliers want a higher price. They're two opposing forces. And so it's the interaction between this force of demand and force of supply that is going to determine the price of a good and service in a market. Now, how are prices determined? Of course, now between these two, between the suppliers and the consumers, they're going to have to make a compromise. The suppliers must be willing to take a lower price, and the consumers must be willing to pay a higher price. So there's going to be a compromise between these two groups of people. Sorry. Now, we are not in economics. We're not saying that prices must only be determined by the force of demand and supply. There are other methods that can be used, including bargaining, for example. Maybe the government setting a price or giving out a recommended price. But for this chapter, we are only going to focus on the market forces of demand and supply. And I'm going to show you how that works just now. Now, we have something called market equilibrium, and this occurs when the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied are equal at a specific price. So the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied are equal at a specific price. All right, let's look at that maybe in the table that I have down here. But before that, just think about the point where the quantity that is being demanded is going to equal the quantity that's being supplied. That is going to be called the market equilibrium. Right, now the equilibrium price will be the price at that equilibrium. So the price at that equilibrium will be called the equilibrium price. Another name for equilibrium price is market clearing price. So market clearing price. So, and when you are at this equilibrium price, there will be no shortage or surplus. We're going to see that just now. So we can find the equilibrium by comparing this table here, and you will see that the equilibrium is very easy to point out. So this is a demand and supply schedule combined. We have the price here, the quantity demanded and the quantity supplied, as you can see. Now, when the price is very low at $1 per unit, the quantity demanded is 20 units and the quantity supplied is only 4. As the price increases, the quantity demanded now is 16. It has decreased, but the quantity supplied has increased. So the suppliers now are willing to bring more, but the consumers are buying less. So they've reduced whatever they can buy. And then when the price goes to 3, quantity demanded decreases and quantity supplied continues to increase. And that's going to go all the way up to when it's $9 and only one consumer is willing to buy. So only one unit is bought, and suppliers now are willing to bring more. But if you look carefully, there is a place on this table where quantity demanded and quantity supplied are equal, and that point is right here. So this here is where the quantity demanded and quantity supplied are equal, and the compromise price would be $4. So this $4 here would be what we're calling the market clearing price, and at this particular level, this would be the equilibrium. So you can use this schedule, demand and supply schedule, to tell where the equilibrium price and quantity are, and basically know where the market equilibrium will be. And of course, you can also use the demand and supply graph. I have it here. This is the demand curve sloping downwards. That's a negative slope, and this is supply curve sloping upwards. This is price and this is quantity. And where the two meet, so that would be this point here. So this price would be $4, and this quantity here would be 12 units. So that is what you're calling so let me write that 4 properly and that 12 properly. So that would be the equilibrium price or the market clearing price, and this will be the quantity demanded and quantity supplied at the equilibrium. So this point here is what we are calling the equilibrium, and that is the equilibrium price, and that is the quantity demanded and supplied at the equilibrium, the 12. All right, now this is not to say that the market is always in equilibrium. Sometimes the market is not in equilibrium. Let's see what we're talking about when the market is not in equilibrium. So when the market is not in equilibrium, we call that a market disequilibrium. So when the market is not in equilibrium, so that's called a market disequilibrium. And it's basically a situation that we can find ourselves in a market where demand and supply are not equal. So when the market is in disequilibrium, the forces of demand and supply should automatically move the price towards the equilibrium level. Let's begin with in a situation where we have excess supply. So in case we have excess supply, this means suppliers are bringing to the market more than the consumers can buy, and this will occur if the price is above the equilibrium. And this means that supply is exceeding demand, and therefore firms may have to drop their prices to cause consumers to buy more and achieve the equilibrium. Let's look at that in a diagram. Okay, so this is the equilibrium as we know it. Let's say the price was set at P2 here. I'm going to put P2 here. So this is P2. This is another price. So the price is higher than the equilibrium price. So now this would be the quantity on the demand curve. This would be the quantity that consumers are purchasing, and this would be the quantity that suppliers are supplying to the market. And as you can see, suppliers are bringing more to the market than consumers are willing to buy. So this space here where suppliers are bringing more than consumers are willing to buy is what we are calling excess supply. So that's called excess supply. The supply is exceeding demand. Another name is called a surplus. So it can also be called a surplus, where supply is more than demand. So that's called a surplus. So what should happen here? What should happen here is that suppliers are going to have to decrease the price. Suppliers are going to have to decrease the price so that consumers can buy. So what's going to happen here is that they're going to be price should decrease. So price should decrease, and when price decreases, there's going to be a contraction in supply. So contraction in supply. So that's one of the things going to happen. The second thing that's going to happen is that there's going to be an extension in demand. So I'm going to show you this in the diagram. So what's going to happen is that if the price is decreased, supply is going to decrease, so it's going to contract like that, and demand is going to extend, and then we're going to go back to the equilibrium. And so that's what's going to happen there. So that's why it says that the price drop will cause demand to extend, that's the extension, and supply to contract, and we're going to go back to the equilibrium. All right, let's finish this. Let's say, for instance, now that we have a shortage, and this is a situation where the price has been set below the equilibrium, and therefore now the demand is more than the supply, and therefore consumers will be buying more and suppliers will be supplying less, and this is going to create a situation called a shortage or excess demand. And for this, we're going to see what is going to happen. So now let's say the price is set at this price here, which is below the equilibrium. So I'm going to call this P3. Okay, I'm going to write that 3 better. So P3. And as you can see, this is quantity supplied at this particular point. So I'm going to call that QS. And this is quantity demanded at this particular time. As you can see, consumers are now willing to buy more than consumers are willing to bring to the market. And so this is going to be called a shortage because consumers are willing to buy more than suppliers are willing to bring to the market. So that's called excess demand. Right, so what should happen here is the exact opposite. So what should happen is that prices should increase so that more suppliers are willing to buy, and we can reduce the number of consumers who are buying this product. Later on, we talked about the role of price, and one of the roles of price was rationing. So increasing the price is going to ration so that only those who can afford this product can buy. All right, so what's going to happen is the price will increase, and therefore the supply is going to extend. So supply is going to experience an extension, and there's going to be demand is going to experience a contraction, and then we just go back to equilibrium. So this is what we mean. So supply is going to experience an extension, remember that from the supply video, and demand is going to experience a contraction, and then we go back to the equilibrium. Right, so that's what happens when we have a shortage or when we have a surplus, excess supply. Okay, now let's finish this. This is now chapter 9, the key terms that we covered so far in chapter 9. We have what is called the equilibrium price, and this is where price and demand are equal. We have the market clearing price, so this is another name for equilibrium price, where there is no shortage and no surplus. We have the term disequilibrium, and this is basically where demand and supply are not equal, and so excess supply and excess demand will be examples of that. And excess supply is where there's more supply than demand, and excess demand is where demand is greater than supply. And then we have the market forces, which are the interaction between demand and supply. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to my videos and share the videos with your classmates. Thank you, and see you in the next video.